So I spent some time playing the Marvel Tokon beta that recently was put out, and do have some thoughts in regards to it. I wanted to take some time at least to just sit back and marinate on them a bit beforehand of throwing them out into the atmosphere, but I think I'm pretty comfortable now of being able to talk about some of these things that I've been thinking on whenever it comes to it. I do like the feel of the game, especially coming from Dragon Ball, being made from ArcSys, which obviously they went about working on this game. Them having a similar feel to it is, it's something to be expected, of course. Between like that, you having stuff like, like the wall break mechanic from like Guilty Gear Strive to be existent here within some context. It definitely has a familiar basis to me that I do appreciate, but I was still feeling like different of a thing, not just feeling like this is just Dragon Ball 2.0 or something of that nature. And even with the characters here, to me they do feel interesting for them to still like try to keep the game in some way like more of like an accessible ordeal of like having some of the stuff that's there with like the auto combos and things like that. It still, again, it feels very akin to like Dragon Ball in that nature for me, to where that despite the fact that you do have, as far as like at a base level, being able to utilize these things as like the auto combos and stuff like that, are things to make it to be easier of getting into, that there still feels like layers of depth there whenever it comes to the characters that we do have here to mess around with, to where like we got some unique things like Danger, for example, with the way that her air dash goes about working, just things like that spices up the whole catalog of the characters that we do have here to mess around with. And I mean, with it even though that I do think that the roster is kind of small for the format of the game, I think that the characters, they feel pretty good, and I think that is definitely like the prime thing to be looking at there, despite the fact that we're like that. It is nice to have like a good quantity of something. I think what is to be more appreciated is the quality of what it is that we do have. Like, it really wouldn't do any justice for me if we had 40 characters on the game and they all just felt like rehashes essentially, or like this one is just slightly different or better, Captain America or something like that. I think the visuals for the game, for example, they look amazing for what it is, that it's just the styling of it. The aesthetics are definitely there. Like, this is just a gorgeous game to look at. And just, even though I'm not even the biggest of fan of some of the designs that they have for some of the characters, I still appreciate just like the details of stuff that they went about even putting in to these things, alongside of like the changes that they have done with it. Even the music, it just feels very theming to what it is that we got going on here with this game. Like, it just does the work for it, especially like stuff like the Spider-Man theme, like that one for me, personal favorite. But yes, even some the Sage themes that they do have for some of them, I think are pretty solid too. Like, it just does a good job whenever it comes to these things, in my opinion. Alongside even small details with the UI, to where that your team that you have like for doing like casual like ring matches, things like that, show up within like those panels and things. And again, just like the whole like comic style that we have for it, like, it's definitely attention to detail that really goes a long way with me. Getting more into like the combat aspect of it, the format of the game feels quite unique. I do like the 4v4 dynamic that we do have going on here, but to be honest with you, it doesn't feel like that you have to really invest wholeheartedly into the 4v4 dynamic. So just to give an example as to what did I mean, I normally played as Wolverine when it came to the beta, and I kind of just functioned as if like that I had 3 assist characters. Did it really being a case where that I had to swap around with the people? Or if I ran into like a bad matchup, maybe I would swap to one of my teammates, like Magneto, for example, and kind of play it like that. I mean, it's still a team game, at heart, like you still have your assists that you can be able to call. You still should be using your team, but it didn't feel as if like that it was necessarily a case where like the Marvel vs. Capcoms or and things of that nature, to where like that you have to go about using these people, especially be it that it's all just one health bar, which definitely changes up like the dynamic of things there, because it is a case where it does feel more of a comfortable affair where like if you want to just use this one character and have like your cast of assisting members that's there, that you can do that type of thing. But obviously like whenever it comes into running into maybe like certain elements that you may not be like too fond of, that's where it's going to get a little bit tricky. So I think like having that element of things there is very interesting, especially be it that whenever it comes to using your team too, when you swap around, it puts them within different positions to where like that you have access to different assists. So playing around with the team can definitely go about like expanding the palette of diversity that you do have access to there, amongst like of course just like matchups and your assists. But again, it just doesn't feel like that you necessarily have to go about doing that and it be like too big of a detriment. That could of course like change over time, but I think that's a good element to have, to where like that if you're somebody who especially is newer coming into it, that it doesn't feel like that you necessarily need to learn 4 characters all at once. Because that was something that, especially talking with some other people, were like, this felt very polarizing. And when I played the beta, it didn't really seem as if like that was such like a centralizing point to really like have to divest into. Even when playing against people, I was normally having to fight 1 or 2 people on the team, and that was kind of it. I didn't have to deal with the whole squad that they would about having. It was just more of a case where like maybe I would have to fight Dr. Doom in Friends. Maybe I would have to fight against Spider-Man in Friends. It wasn't a case where I was having to fight against Spider-Man and Captain America and Iron Man and Magic all together, So I think that is like a very unique factor presented with the game. But like I said, that could be something that goes about changing overall. Just at face value, it doesn't seem like that's something of being like such a centralizing point. And I did say this beforehand, where like that I think that probably it's just gonna be a case where like maybe it'd be optimal to just use like your first 2 people probably, and just play off of that. But obviously, as we you dive deeper into the game, there's gonna be more incentive of utilizing more of the tools that you have. Like that's the type of thing that keeps me to be very enticed in regards to these games, especially where that we do have like that level of like depth and variety to be presented there, especially when that it comes to like picking the people that you do have like these elements of things to think about in regards to said thing. It is, like I said, it just really just sparks in that interest. Now, while I personally had a good time while playing the beta, there is definitely some things that I do think do need to be cleaned up just a bit, especially beforehand of like us getting to like final release. If not, just like over time of stuff to be ironed out that I would like to have to be addressed. Because as great of like elements that are presented for this game, there's some stuff where it just feels like should not be the case. One of the prime examples that I can think of is definitely whenever it comes to the inputs. Like there's points where just stuff doesn't feel as smooth as it probably should be, especially when it comes to a case of doing stuff like DP motions. It feels like you have to be so perfect within doing so, to where like within other titles, like as long as you did like certain extent of said thing, that you would get like your DP motion. And for here, like it just feels very strict in regards to doing so, to where like that you have to end on like a down forward, precisely things like that. Even within the context of like you doing combos, it feels off is the best way for me to go about putting it. Even within like some normal cases of where like that maybe like trying to move around, I don't know if it's just a case as to where like that maybe just like other stuff that's going on that's like gatekeeping the experience there, but that's something definitely I would like to see them go about ironing out, especially like beforehand of release. Like I don't think that should be something existing there, especially when we have so many other examples to speak for when like that, you know, like this type of thing being handled and done well and not impeding on like the whole shebang of what we got going on. Another thing for me definitely is like the fluidity of the assist. While it's not, I don't think it's horrible, I would like just like a little bit more freedom within some of these cases, like especially when I'm in the air. It is a case as where sometimes I just want for me to be able to like do like my grounded assist instead of like them being in the air with me, especially be it that some of the assists, especially coming from the air, are just not the best. Like probably Green Goblin would be like a good example as to where like he just does a little dainty dive kick and, you know, it's whatever, you know, it's nothing super crazy where like that I would sometimes just want for him to be on the ground to be able to throw out maybe like the batarangs, or, you know, maybe for him to get on like the hoverboard and whatnot, just to kind of cover my approach a little bit better. And I think that's, you know, like a factor that's kind of limiting on the case for like this type of game as to where like that in general with like tag system for the game, like, you know, you can call out assists, be able to, you know, active tag to switch into your other teammate. There's quite a bit of freedom within that realm that I would just think that it would also be applied within like this other situation, especially when I'm just trying to maneuver around the screen. You know, it feels like I'm handcuffed in that situation. I'm not too big of a fan of that. Also, speaking of the movement, there are points and times where you just feel like very weighted down and just have like a sluggish experience in regards to like moving. And that could be the case as to where like that will maybe like land and recover from things, stuff of that nature. Like it definitely has like a like situation where like trying to do certain action of things, like maybe like doing instant air dashes and whatnot, are coming down from like doing like an attack. It just doesn't feel as smooth and clean as it probably should be. Even talking with some people, they shared like some similar sentiments to me in regards to that being the case. But I don't know. That's definitely something that I have to go about unpacking there. I just was not too big of a fan of. I also think that there could be some better implementation of some of like the macros or like shortcuts in regards to the game, to where like, for example, if you want to do like your assemble super, you trying to like do like the macro for it within combos, and like it feels like a very hit and miss experience in regards to things. And I mean, obviously, of course, you know, you can just do like traditional input and call it a day. But I think that if you're going to have that type of thing there, especially when like you could do other actions and it be just fine, like that, these types of things shouldn't be feeling as sluggish as they are within, like, especially when you're in the midst of like doing a combo to people. And of course, I can't end off without talking about the case of the matter as to actually getting into the beta, especially for my PC players. Shout out to y'all. Like, trying to get into it, especially on PC, was just such a headache. And whenever it came down to it, it's like trying to do the simple stuff like trying to screen share on like Discord, things like that. It was not smooth at all. This would do some dastardly things that I feel like just needs to go about being addressed for sure. And I think more so with like the whole like Steam and, you know, like everything that they have as far as they implemented the forefront between like having to have like a PSN account and things like that, just really gatekeeping the experience. And there, like, I understand, but if it's to the point where like that the game is not even like functioning that well, to where people are having crazy frame drops and things like that, or the screen is blacking out, amongst this a variety of things, that we should probably take a look at that. Because if that is to be the case as to where that's what's going on release, yeah, I'm just strictly sticking to PlayStation at that point. I'm just not even gonna bother of getting it for Steam. There's definitely quite a bit of things here in which that, of course, could go about as far as like, you know, highlighting on both ends, like stuff like netcode, things of that nature. You know, other things that like kind of want to give some time as to before I end up like really addressing for full release. I do think coming from closed beta to this one that we did recently have, I do think that there has been definitely like some fine like adjustments of things that I just want to continue to trend on, because I don't want for it to be a case that we have the release for this game to happen and we have a rocky start, you know. So fingers crossed that we can at least have these things to be handled within a reasonable manner. Of course, that's just my opinion. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Of course, I'd love to hear y'all feedback. Y'all give me some more insight of things as to what you go about seeing on your side of things whenever it comes to the situation. And, you know, how are you feeling so far in regards to like just the beta? You know, rather it's something in regards to like the net code as far as with like the characters and whatnot. Share with me your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Anyways, this is Nightmares in. Oki's in it. I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all take care of yourselves.